You know how it is. A major global crisis, like a war, finally seems to wind down and we all feel like we can breathe again. But if you actually look at the global economy, under the surface, there's this weird chaos that just sticks around.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The headlines move on, of course, but for the people and the companies that actually move all the stuff we buy, the crisis is, well, it's far from over. The economic aftershocks just keep rolling in.
So this is the big question we're tackling today. Why does this economic disruption last for so long? The answer is it's pretty fascinating. And it shows us that the real problem isn't the crisis itself, but the system the crisis hits.
To really get what's going on with this lingering crisis, we've got to look past the big, flashy headlines and dive into the hidden machinery of our global supply chains.
And believe it or not, the key to unlocking this whole thing comes from a pretty old school tool. It's a game, a simulation that was developed at MIT way back in the 1960s. It's called the beer game, and look, I know what you're thinking, but it has absolutely nothing to do with drinking. It's actually a super powerful simulation of how supply chains work, and it explains the chaos we're seeing today perfectly.
Okay, so the game is really simple. You've got 4 players, a basic supply chain. You've got the retailer who sells to us, the customers. They order from a wholesaler. The wholesaler orders from a distributor, and the distributor orders from the manufacturer. It's just a straight, simple line. Now, here is the absolute kicker. This is the most important rule of the game. Everyone is basically flying blind. The manufacturer at the top has no idea what you and I are actually buying. They only see the order that the distributor places, and it's the same for everyone else down the chain. The information is totally siloed. So, the game gets going. Demand is nice and stable. Then, the person running the game throws in one tiny little change. For just a couple of weeks, customer demand for beer goes up. Just a little bit. And that is when everything goes haywire. This one tiny change sets off this massive, system-wide reaction. And it's got a really cool name, the Bullwhip Effect. I mean, think about it. Put yourself in the retailer's shoes. You see a small jump in sales. So to be safe, to make sure you don't run out, you order a little extra from your wholesaler. Nothing crazy. But then the wholesaler sees your slightly bigger order and they think, demand is picking up. So they also order a little extra from the distributor. See where this is going? Everyone is making what feels like a perfectly smart, rational decision. And that right there is the bullwhip effect. It's literally like cracking a whip. That small flick of the wrist, our tiny change in customer demand, it creates this huge, violent wave at the very end of the whip, which, in our case, is the poor manufacturer. This chart just shows you how wild the amplification gets. You have a tiny 5% bump in customer demand. The retailer maybe increases their order by 10%, but by the time that signal gets all distorted and makes its way up to the manufacturer, they're seeing a 40% jump. So they frantically start ramping up production, all based on something that isn't really happening. But here's the craziest part of all. Even after customer demand goes right back to where it was, these massive waves of over-ordering and then under-ordering just keep crashing through the system for a long, long time. Everyone's just trying to correct for the chaos they helped create. So, how on earth does a simple game from the 60s explain our entire global economy? Well, it's because the exact same thing is happening right now, just on a much, much, much bigger scale. So, instead of a small change in beer orders, our real-world triggers are things like geopolitical tensions, sudden spikes in energy prices, a ship getting stuck in a canal, you name it. Every single one of these is a flick of the wrist that sends a giant wave up our incredibly complex global supply chain. And this is the point I really want you to take away. Our whole global economy is basically playing this massive high-stakes version of the beer game, and it's been doing it nonstop, especially over the last few years. So this brings us to the most important lesson of all. If we want to understand what's really happening, we have to stop focusing only on the events and start looking at the system itself. A lot of us are asking the wrong question. We ask things like, when will this war end? Or when will the markets get back to normal? But what the beer game teaches us is that the smarter, more strategic question to ask is, how is the system going to behave long after this event is over? Because here's the bottom line. The structure of the system, all the delays, the lack of information, our own human reactions, that structure is so much more powerful and long-lasting than any single event that comes along and disrupts it.
The waves are going to continue long after the storm has passed.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. In a world that's obsessed with breaking news and whatever is in the headlines today, are we focusing on the right thing? Are we just watching the headlines? Or are we paying attention to the invisible systems that those headlines disrupt and the huge tidal waves they've already set in motion?